Hello everybody. Hope y'all had a good week. This week we're learning about unbiased and biased samples. This is a little tricky. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of thinking. It's just an introduction to this material, so don't beat yourself up if you can't figure out something. Like I said, it's just an introduction. So yes, it might be a little tricky, it might be a little tough, but just read through it, look back at the notes, rewatch this video if you need help, and then of course always ask me questions, but don't get upset if you get a little confused about something, okay? Because it is a little tricky, it's a little wordy. But we've got unbiased and we've got biased samples. If you want to write your definitions, you can right here, but we're not going to do that in the video because they are given to you on the next page. So we're just going to skip down here to the example. It says a TV programming manager wants to conduct a survey to determine which reality television show is the favorite of the viewers in a certain viewing area. He's considering the three samples shown. Draw an X through the two samples that would not fairly represent all of the people in the viewing area. Okay, so we've got three samples. We want to see which one is a fair sample for this manager to pick people to be on this reality television show. Okay, so sample one says 100 people that are trying out for the reality show. If they're trying out for that reality show, chances are they probably like that reality show and they would really want to be on it. So it's not really giving a fair chance to everybody in the population. It is basically only going to be those people who really want to be on that show and who like that show. So this is not going to be a fair example. Sample 2 says 100 students at your middle school. So our middle school has a whole lot more than 100 students. So if they just surveyed 100 students out of the whole entire Thompson Middle School, does that really give you a fair sample? Not really. It's just a very small portion of people. Okay. And then sample 3, it says every 100th person at a shopping mall. So they're counting the people who come through the door, and so the 100th person who walks through, they're going to ask, or they're going to they're going to ask if they want to try out. And then 100 more people are going to come through that door. So the 200th person they're going to ask. The 300th person they're going to ask. This is what you would call a fair sample, okay? Because they're doing it systematically. So this is sample 3 is what we would want to do. Okay, so just like we said when I was talking, it says to explain why those two samples are not fair. Sample 1. Sample 1, people are trying out, or the people that are trying out are most likely fans of the show. Okay, so it's not going to be a good representation. People who are trying out are probably fans of the show. They are most likely fans of the show and they really, really want to be on it. So it's not a random sample. It is people that like the show and that want to be on the show. Okay. Sample 2 was the 100 students at your middle school. So like I said, that's just a very small representation of the middle school. So it's also only 11 to 13-year-olds, 11 to 14-year-olds that they're surveying. So it's a very small sample of the of people. Okay, I can't talk tonight. So only a small age, or we'll say a narrow age group. Would be represented. So lots of reading, lots of writing. Only a narrow age group would be represented at that middle school. Okay. But again, sample 3, every 100th person, that would be the right way to survey people. Okay. All right. New page. So it says to get valid results, a sample must be chosen very carefully. An unbiased sample, so here's one of our vocab words. An unbiased sample is selected so that it can accurately represent the entire population. Okay? And there's 2 ways of an unbiased sample. If you have an unbiased sample, so like these 2 right here, that would be called a valid statement. Okay? So these 2 examples of sampling, those are valid samples. Okay? They're unbiased and they're valid. Okay? The first type we have is a simple random sample. So that means that each item or person in the population is as likely to be chosen as any other. So here's an example of what type of sample that would be. Each student's name is written on a piece of paper. The names are placed in a bowl, and the names are picked without looking. So each person in that class is just as likely that one name gets drawn over the other because everybody's name is on that piece of paper, and then they're randomly picking that piece of paper, okay? So that would be a simple random sample, and that would be a valid, unbiased sample, okay? A systematic random sample is like that example on the first page, every 100th person that they surveyed. That's a systematic random sample. The items or the people are selected according to a specific time or an item interval, okay? So every 20th person is chosen from an alphabetical list of all students attending a school. So every 20th person, that's an interval, okay? Every 20th person that walks through that door, so person 20, person 40, person 60. Also at a specific time. So if I said, okay, I'm going to survey everybody on the hour. So at 1 o'clock, I'm going to survey somebody, or whoever walks through the door at 1 o'clock. Whoever walks through the door at 2 o'clock, I'm going to survey. Whoever walks through the door at 3 o'clock, I'm going to survey. That would also be an example of a systematic random sample. Okay, so anytime that there's a time or an interval, that systematic random sample, it's valid and it's unbiased. Okay, so we're going to have 3 parts to all of our answers here. I want to know if it's unbiased or biased, valid or not valid, and then what type of sample is it. Okay. Students normally get a little tricked because unbiased samples are valid. These samples down here, these are unvalid or not valid. Okay. So they're opposites. What's that called? Pretense? Whatever that's called. You do not have the un here. You do not have the un here. Okay, so valid and unbiased match. Unvalid and biased match. Okay. So in a biased sample, one or more parts of the population are favored over the others. 2 ways to pick a biased sample we have down here below. So a convenient sample, that's a convenient sample, or a convenient sample consists of members of a population that are easily accessed. So it's easy for them, it's convenient for them. To represent all the students attending a school, they only survey 1 math class. So if they just pick my 4th period to survey the students in the 4th period to say that everybody loves math, that's not a good survey because they're surveying a math class, okay? And they're only surveying 30 people out of the hundreds of kids that are at the school, okay? But it's easy for them. They walk into my math class and they say, okay, here's this survey, take this survey, okay? It is not valid, so it's not a good way to survey something. It's invalid and it's biased, okay? So something that is convenient, that is easy for them, it's invalid and it's biased. A voluntary response sample, involves only those who want to participate, okay? Students at a school who wish to express their opinions complete an online survey. So if it's voluntary, that means you don't have to do it, but you can if you want to. So say that the question's asking, do you like sports? Well, if you like sports, most likely you're probably going to say, yes, I love sports. But if you don't really like sports, you're probably not going to take a survey. Or if it's a survey labeled shopping, well, if you have no care in the world to go shopping, you're probably not going to look at that survey and you're not going to want to do it. But people who do like to shop, they're going to want to go take that survey about shopping. Okay. So here's an example that, again, like I said, you have 3 parts. So I want to know, is it biased or unbiased? Is it valid or not valid? And then what type of sample is it? Okay. Is it a simple random sample? Is it a systematic random sample? Is it a convenient sample? Or is it a voluntary response sample? Okay. So that's parts to your answers. So right here it says a simple random sample of students at a middle school shows that 10 students prefer listening to rock, 15 prefer listening to hip hop, and 25 prefer listening to no music. So they say it can be concluded that half of the students prefer no music. So here you've got 10 plus 15, so rock plus hip hop, that's 25. And then 25 prefer no music. So 25 and 25, that you could easily say, okay, half of the students prefer no music. Which is valid. They did a random sample. Okay. So that's a simple random sample. And then it is unbiased because simple random sample falls underneath my unbiased category. And then it's a valid conclusion. So those are your 3 parts. Simple random sample, unbiased, and valid. Okay. They randomly sampled the students of the middle school, all of the students at the middle school. They didn't just survey the 7th graders. They didn't just survey one period. Okay, they surveyed the whole school, and then they took whatever responses they got from that whole entire school. Okay, so that's a valid sample. Example 2 says every 10th person who walks into a department store is surveyed. So every 10th person, that right there, sounds like something like one of our examples we looked at. Out of the 150 customers that they surveyed, 70 preferred rock music. So they say, okay, about half of the customers prefer rock music. So 70 is about 100, is about 1/2 of 150. Okay, it's not perfect, it's not exactly, but it's close. It's about half of 150. So you need to look at, okay, the way that they surveyed, was it biased or unbiased? So they said that every 10th person who came through the door, that's a systematic random sample that we talked about. It's a interval, okay? Every 20th person who walked through the door, in this case it was every 10th person. So it's a systematic, meaning it's unbiased, and it's also valid, okay? So the population is every 10th customer. The sample is unbiased. It's a systematic random sample, meaning that the conclusion is valid. It's good. We like it, okay? Example 3 says the customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. The results are shown in the graph. The store manager concludes that most people prefer to listen to music. Okay, so let's look at our graph here. It's a little gray. Here's one piece. Okay. So you've got this little chunk right here that is other, and then this little piece is playing sports, and then all of this is listening to music. Okay. So looking at the other and the playing sports, obviously those are the 2 smaller categories. Most of the people liked listening to music. So where were they surveying the people at? At a music store. Okay, the customers of a music store are surveyed. They determined that most of the people like to listen to the music. Well, they're in a music store. So if they're in a music store, most likely that's what they like to do. Okay? If they were in a sports store, then that sports section would probably be a whole lot larger than the music section. So this is not it's an unbiased sample. Okay? I mean, it's biased, sorry. So it's a biased sample. It's easy for them to do it. It's a convenience sample. Okay? They walked into the music store. It was easy to survey everybody in the music store. And then because it's biased and it's a convenient sample, that means it's not valid or it's invalid. Okay. Example A. This one they did not give us the answers to. A radio station asks its listeners to indicate their preference for one of the two candidates in an upcoming election. 72% of the listeners who responded preferred candidate A, so the radio station announced that candidate A would win the election. Is the conclusion valid, and justify your answer? Okay, so what they just asked their listeners. So did all those listeners, did they have to call in and tell them what they thought? No. It was only if whoever's listening wanted to give their opinion, okay? So in this case, it's only the people who wanted to participate. So this is going to be that voluntary response sample right here, okay? Only those who want to participate. So this is a voluntary response sample, meaning it's invalid and it's biased. Okay? Everybody did not have to participate. So we're going to write the conclusion is not valid. The population, for the people that they surveyed, is restricted to the listeners of the radio station. And what type did we say it was? A voluntary response sample. Voluntary response sample. They did not have to answer it. They did not have to call in and give their opinion. The ones who did call in, those are the ones that were surveyed, and so therefore it's not valid. Okay, it's not a good way to really get true information. Okay. Example number 2. It says to find out how much money the average American family spends to cool their home, 100 Alaskan families are surveyed at random. Of the families, 85 said that they spend less than $75 per month on cooling their house. The researcher concluded that the average American family spends less than $75 on cooling per month. Is this valid? Okay, so first off, we're talking about Alaskan families. So what is the temperature in Alaska the majority of the year? It's mainly cold, okay? So the typical Alaskan family, can you compare their cooling bill to a family that lives in Florida? Not really, because majority of the months in Florida it's going to be really hot. Therefore, those families are going to be cooling their house much more often than the families in Alaska where it's snowy and cold most of the months of the year. Okay, So the researchers saying that the average American family spends less than $75 per month, that is not valid, because they're saying all of America can be compared to these 100 Alaskan families, and that's not the case. Okay? So this is not valid. This conclusion is not valid. This is a biased. A biased, what type of sample? It's a biased convenient sample. It was easy for them. The person lived in Alaska, therefore they probably just surveyed whoever lived in Alaska. But if they wanted to find out the average cost for an American family, that means they should have gone out and they should have surveyed 100 people in Alaska, 100 people in Hawaii, 100 people in Alabama, 100 people from each state to get a good average. Okay, so it's a biased convenient sample. Since people in other states would spend much more. Since people in other states would spend much more than Alaska. So yes, I do want to see full sentences written. I don't want to just see not valid, biased, convenient sample. I want to see your work written in sentences. Okay. I think that is all for our notes. Yeah. So that's it for the notes. So the next page you have is Tuesday's work. And then the next page you have evens for Wednesday, odds for Thursday, and then you have another sheet for Friday. And it's pretty short because it is a lot of reading and a lot of writing, so we didn't want to give you too many problems each day, since it does kind of require you to read and write a lot. Okay. So again, I know that this is a little tricky, it's a little confusing, it's a lot to think about. This page right here, the second page in your notes, this is what's really important. So when you're going through all these problems, I suggest that you have this page right next to you so that you can easily see what type of samples you have, whether they're valid or not valid, and then whether they're unbiased or biased. Okay, it gives you a definition and an example of each type. So this sheet should come in handy while you're working on your work. Okay, if you come up to a question you are just completely lost, feel free to email me. I'll be glad to help you. But again, remember this video will be here the whole week, so make sure you refer back to this video and this page of notes. Hope you'll have a great week. And just like last week, I'm going to send out another check-in Google form, probably on Thursday again. So most of you should have at least watched the video and got started on your work by the time that form comes out on Thursday, and I'll just have it due by Friday again. Okay, so be looking for that next week. Have a great week, and I will see y'all next Monday, or I'll talk to you next Monday.